Howdy folks, everybody hear me okay? Alright, I'll just wait one more minute to see if anybody else wanders by here. Yep, I like the cats with wings, very cool. Alright, we might as well go ahead and get started. Let's see, not a lot of new material this week. We've had a viewer update that went out. That was the Mate Umeshu release, and so as usual we've got a lot of the other viewers getting updated based on that. Let's see, the Muscadine viewer for Animesh customization has been updated recently. I think that's actually current as of the previous merge rather than the one that we just had, but in any case, if you've got that project viewer, you've probably seen an update there. No, there's not any new feature work there. It's just pulling in the stuff from the, or in the case of Muscadine, actually from the EAP, since it's based on that. Let's see what else is going on. EAP is continuing. We have, we still have a few graphics things being looked at, and don't really have any update on the timing of that one, unfortunately. I know it's been going on for a bit. Let's see, what else? So, been working on Arctan some. We've had a lot of discussions about that in past weeks. The Arctan project is intended to give us the information we need to update the rendering cost and land impact calculations to try to make them more reflective of the actual complexity of content. And we'd done some work on that some months back that had been kind of on hold for a while. So recently I've been in the process of trying to get that synced up with the current version of the code base and get it working. The first goal is just to get it in a state where we can start collecting data on what the different objects in the scene or the avatar are like, and then try to compare that to the timing information we have about how fast the viewer is running. That's the kind of thing we're going to be looking to try to figure out the actual performance impact of various kinds. Repo for which? For Arctan? Yeah, I'm not sure if that's in a public repo or not. It's kind of a side project because it's I don't even know if it's ever actually going to make it out as a release viewer. It's basically just giving us tools to collect more data. My suspicion is at some point it will get pulled into a public viewer, but it's not quite there yet. We'll keep you posted on that as it moves along. let's see what else is going on. I think that's about it, actually. If anybody's got any questions or things they want to chat about, I'm happy to kick around topics, but not not a lot of big news just recently. Animesh throttle, yeah, we'll probably reduce that. The main concern is that we're trying to set a speed limit such that people aren't going to try to use the script for something really intensive, like doing real-time animation, using Animesh customization, that kind of thing. But I don't think the impact is high enough that we couldn't possibly go lower than we are now. So that'll probably be getting tweaked over time. Oh, what have you seen, Lucy? Have a product in mind. Could you talk about what the product is intended to do? I'm curious what kinds of application you're shooting for, and how fast you would need the throttle to be for that to work. Penny says Animesh characters count toward max avatar limit. Yeah, I mean, for most things, the Animesh objects are kind of treated like avatars internally. Which avatar limit are you thinking of there? Is this like the number of avatars that are shown before they go to imposter or something like that? Yeah, that's the current intended behavior. We could discuss the pros and cons of having some other approach, and we could set different limits for real avatars and animations or something like that. But since they do look pretty much the same as far as the rendering system is concerned. Currently, we've basically got them in the same bucket with avatars. It's probably true that since animeshes have a have a fairly strict complexity limit, that your average animesh isn't going to be as impactful as your average avatar. Imposter mode works worse when you're not in full sunlight. Is it an issue with how bright the light is, or is it an issue with shadows in particular? Yeah, as far as I know, the intended behavior with imposters is that they basically go through the same rendering pipeline as regular avatars, but then it just remembers the result for a few frames, so it doesn't have to keep redrawing it constantly. If it's not kind of performing as intended, then that would be a good thing to have a JIRA against if there isn't one already. Yeah, I don't know if animeshes are significantly lighter weight than avatars, you could probably make a case for having two different limits rather than just one limit, you know, for max avatars. But I don't know, we've got an awful lot of settings in the graphic settings already. Yeah, basing imposturing partly on rendering cost would be an interesting approach. You know, right now we just use it for the, you know, for the jelly doll stuff, but you know, you could in principle weight that sort of thing in for imposters as well. I mean, the problem is that imposters don't help with performance that much. I mean, they help, but if you've got an avatar that's just, you know, super blown out on cost, you know, it's still going to impose a significant cost just to render it as an imposter. You know, that's kind of the intent for the jelly dolls, is fallback in case you've got something, you know, just completely blowing your performance. But yeah, there could be intermediate cases where, you know, it's big, but it's not crazy big, and having that kind of imposter logic might help. There was a question a little ways back about making Animesh animation, what you see is what you get. I'm not sure exactly what differences you're looking for there. I mean, for the most part, Animesh animations should look about like Avatar animations. You know, they're using the same system, so I'm not sure if you're talking about an issue with the animation system in general, or if it's an issue specifically. Lucy, I don't think I did see your comment about body shape resource impact. Is it up the scroll a ways? Oh, you're saying not any impact using 20 test avatars. So this is all of those 20 are changing as fast as they're allowed to, basically. Okay, well that's a good test. And each of those updates is changing what, all of the applicable parameters, or 115? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, you know, once we have more of that kind of data, we can talk about what makes sense for the throttle. You know, the 10-second thing is was basically just put in to have a throttle at all and get the system working rather than to necessarily have the right value. You may recall that was kind of the way it worked with early days with Animesh too, where sure that the question about jumps in land impact, returning a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, we're concerned about that too. I mean, as we said before, any change to the way we do land impact formulas is going to have to be rolled out, in a gradual way, with lots of advanced publicity. There's not going to be one moment where we just throw a switch and half the stuff on the grid gets returned. We consider making a new type of mesh object classification. All mesh after X date would be governed by arctan. Potentially. It doesn't actually have to be a different mesh type. Like when we added materials, we basically had a new cost formula that was rolled out at the time that materials became available. And we could just use the existence of the materials data as a flag, and so we could potentially handle it some way like that too. But that's definitely one possibility, is to have it be kind of an increment. At least initially applies more to new. Yeah, it's very early days right now. We're really just trying to get the information we need to figure out what we'd like the numbers to be. Stage of trying to change anything. I think keying it by res date might be a little tricky though, because if you've got something in your inventory, each time you want to actually try to use it, you'd have to res it. So we'd be changing the behavior of stuff that people had in their inventory, even if we wouldn't be changing the behavior of things that were like already out in the world. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I wouldn't put too much stock in whatever's going on the forums with Arctan, since we haven't really announced much of anything there. I'm not even really following any forum threads on it currently. Basically, right now it's at the stage where we're just trying to collect good information. Then we have to decide how to roll it out and how ambitious we want to make the scheme. If we can fix some of the worst holes, that's better than nothing. If we can make a more ambitious change, that still works, we'd consider that. We're not really ruling anything out right now, but it's just a process that we have to define later on. It's really not really ready to say yet. If there are threads that I should be following, feel free to paste some links here. I'm happy to take a look at them. Motoko, you'd asked about showing the difference between Blender and Animesh. I'm happy to take a look at anything you have, or if you want to file a JIRA, that would be another good way to, give the details. Yeah, LOD is a big deal. We certainly aren't going to make any big changes without considering LOD. That was one of the first things we figured out when we were doing Animesh land impact, was that we had to avoid penalizing the lower LODs, and that's definitely one of the things we want to address with Arctan. Yeah, avatar rendering costs certainly can be a big deal. I think there are regions out there where, even if there's nobody in them, you can still get just absolutely slammed by the complexity of the stuff that's rezzed. But yeah, avatars are a big part of it in most settings. Arctan will affect jelly dolls. Yeah, presumably, if we change the way that rendering cost is computed, then what it means to set a particular threshold for rendering cost would also change. So it would it would be factored in that sense. Oh yeah, Bigs on Mesh. We haven't really talked about that yet this week. I've seen there's been some discussion about bakes in the forum thread. We've had some suggestions for proposed changes and things. Brought in a few of those as possible future work. And it sounds like a lot of the content creators are starting to get on board as well. Anybody have kind of experiences with bakes recently?
Well, I could give you my report of that bug that I found 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, remember which one that was?
Yeah, it was the mesh I'm wearing, the lower half of my avatar. When I would go into the appearance editor, the texture would get all messed up.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I did some investigating after the meeting, and it does look like there was a JIRA already filed for it or something very similar. And I investigated further, and I figured out what was actually going on, at least for this mesh. This particular body that I'm wearing, not the head, but the upper body, the torso and the lower and the legs, is a single mesh. But it has two faces applied to it, obviously, or two different materials applied to it. The upper body and then the lower body. And what I had done in Maya was that I had moved the UVs for the lower body out of the normal UV space. So normal UV space is usually from 0 to 1 for U and 0 to 1 for V. And often when I'm working with a complicated mesh and there tends to be UVs that are overlapping each other, and it gets to be a big mess. And so what I often do is I will take some UVs and I'll put it in a different space. I'll tile it. It's called tiling in Maya. And so I took the lower UVs for the lower body, and I put it from U was still 0 to 1 for U, but I lowered it so that the V was -1 to 0, so it was outside the normal UV space. Now, when you're not in the appearance editor, it looks just fine, because textures just repeat themselves. But when I would go into the appearance editor mode, those UVs are being handled differently, or the texture, the way it's being handled by the whatever rendering engine is used for the appearance editor is being done differently. So it's just that the mesh is different. The UVs are not in the regular UV space. So you can pass.
Yeah, I do remember there was a JIRA about the way that the texture coordinates were getting handled specifically in local edit mode. So that would make sense if your thing was getting affected by that.
Right, and it totally explains why in normal, when you're not in appearance editor mode, everything works perfectly. It looks great. There's no problem. So that makes sense.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so that was one of the ones that we decided it wasn't really a blocker for Bakes on Mesh because it was only in local edit mode, but it is something we want to fix. And we wound up with a few issues that were flagged that way. So yeah, I'm hoping we can get a bit more graphics resources toward some of these things in the future. But we'll have to see. Probably depends on how things go with EAP as well.
Awesome. Yeah, the only drawback that I saw to it, the way the system is right now, is that if you don't have your UVs in the regular UV space, such as my lower legs, you can't really adjust like the pant leg length, in the editor. But if people know that, they just know to make sure that before you upload your mesh, make sure that all your UVs are in the UV space, and then everything, even in the editor, appearance editor, works just fine.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense because we do have some built-in tweaks for wearables that are based on a certain standard texture space, like the pants leg or the shirt sleeve length or that kind of thing.
Right. I found it really useful like this. I'm wearing two different system shirts, one on top of the other, and I was able to adjust the length of one of the shirts, the gold color, if anybody's using regular Linden Lab viewer, and to shorten the length of the top, and it is a different color. So now I have two different, basically a totally customizable top that I can adjust where I want the color to go. So it was pretty awesome. I did want to ask if anybody's here in the Firestorm development team. Do they have any sort of estimate when they're going to get the Bakes on Mesh viewer out?
Yeah, I haven't really heard anything on that one yet. Kathy, I'm not seeing the hands on your avatar. Is that just me, or is there?
No, this No, you're seeing it correctly. This particular
Okay.
mesh does not have hands, and I'm not wearing any additional mesh hands, so that when I wore this avatar, since this mesh body doesn't have hands on it, it just made the hands invisible. Same with the feet. There's
Okay, gotcha.
it's just a test body that I had gotten permission from Shadeen Monroe of Slink to upload and do tests on and stuff.
Lucy, the muscadine is basically on the back burner right now. We did get a merge out recently, and we'll continue to keep it up to date with viewer releases as that stuff changes. But in terms of like new feature bug work, it's probably going to be a little while because, as I say, I'm basically working on the R10 stuff right now and trying to get that into some kind of reasonable state. Once we have ArcTan to the point where it can be used for data collection, we can hand off some of the data collection part to other folks, and I should have some time to look at other things for a while. I don't know how long the foreseeable future is. We're not shooting for an extremely long time frame for muscadine. It would be more likely that we would try to do just do it as a smaller project that gets out sooner, rather than trying to kind of address everything that people would like to do about animeshes. That's a general thing that I'd like to see us doing for future work. Get some stuff working and get it out rather than have it turn into kind of a giant project that drags on for a long time. But it's tricky. It often turns out that things you want to work on are interlinked in some way, or that there are bugs or other concerns that you hadn't initially been aware of, and it winds up taking longer than you'd hoped even after you try to trim it back. So we'll see. EEP is in RC, and the RC is getting updated, but in terms of it actually being ready for release, that's kind of a different level of bug fixing. I would suspect that Firestorm would want to keep EEP and Bakes on Mesh separate, but of course that's their call. I did not see the comment on darker Bakes on Mesh eyes. Backing up. If eye textures are darker when applied as Bakes on Mesh, That's not an issue that I've heard about before. So it would be good to have a bug for that if you want to file a JIRA for it. Just to give specifics about the process of exactly how to repro it and what's being compared there. Okay, that sounds great. Thanks. All right. If there's any question I haven't answered, I probably missed it when it scrolled by, so feel free to throw it out again. Can we get the current EAP functions on the wiki instead of the forum? Yeah, I'm not really sure what the current state of the documentation for EAP is. Generally the wiki is not getting updated much. We're trying to put more stuff in the knowledge base instead, which isn't quite the same as the forum, but I think it's the same sort of general part of the web universe anyway. For LSL, yeah, I think that would be a big project that nobody is really prepared to tackle right now. So it's the LSL stuff may stay on the wiki for a while. Other than just the hassle factor of getting it converted over, though, what's the concern? Is it harder to search on the knowledge base? Beck requests that any realistic data collection be used as a precursor to ARC10, including Firestorm users. Yeah, I'm not sure the best way to handle that. I mean, right now we have the data collection. I mean, our data collection is actually baked into a build of our viewer, so if we wanted to get comparable stats from Firestorm, then they would basically have to incorporate the arctan changes to be able to do the same kinds of logging. If there's an interest in being able to do that, then it's probably something we could talk about once we get to the stage where is Linden viewer. Yeah, unfortunately, the wiki isn't open for everybody to edit it anymore. I think it is possible to get permissions to do that, but we had the usual problems that you get when something's open to everybody. Yeah, I think that's the email. Okay, so when we're asking about getting the EAP functions on the wiki, are we talking about LSL commands, or are we talking about something else? Yeah, I would think we don't have all the LSL commands on the wiki since most of them are there now. I can ask around about that. Could be something that was added recently, for that matter. All right. Well, maybe we've exhausted our topics for this week. Let's see. I think we're on normal schedule next week, so should see everybody then if you want to swing by. And we'll let you know how things are going. Yeah, Lucy, I do hope to get back to Muscadine in the not ultra-distant future, but I just have to get Arctan in some sort of useful state first, so see how that goes. All right. Well, thanks for coming, everybody. We'll talk to you in a few more days.
Awesome. Thanks, Vir. Thanks, Linden. Thanks, everyone.
Everyone.